The future is here.
That's it. We're
And
in it.
Chang Robotics has been doing it the
We're
whole time.
doing our little piece, man.
Yeah. What have you been up to?
Chilling, dude. I put everything I'm up to on the internet, so I know it's a lot, but if you just follow on LinkedIn or X, that's what I'm up to.
Yeah, I
Maybe,
saw on your
yeah.
website how to focus on Made of America, and my coworker in the future is going to be a robot.
Yeah, all those things are true. Oh shoot, let me clean up my back real quick before we. I realize I got a ton of crap on the floor. I'll be right back.
It's all good.
Yeah, that's not the look. I can't have messy office on this Unconventional Money Moves podcast. It's not going to work.
Yes. No one better I thought could have been I guess than you, because everything in robotics up until now has pretty much been unconventional, because you started your company like 8 or 9 years ago.
Yeah.
Before robots were actually like out in San Francisco just hanging out at parties and stuff.
Yeah. Yep. We've been there the whole time.
So as a robotics organization, like, what are you guys building? I saw you do things for like companies like Coca-Cola and whatnot. And I know there's like I remember when we first met, you were like working on some sort of like autonomous vehicle or something in downtown Jacksonville, if I remember correctly.
Yeah. Are we starting? Or
yeah.
Oh, we're live.
Yeah, okay. I just get right into it and chat.
Let's start fresh then. Yeah. Sorry, I didn't know if we were catching up or doing your podcast.
Oh, both.
It's the same thing. All right. You want to re-ask that question?
Yeah. So I know when we first met, I think you either just started or within like a year or so, Chang Robotics, and you've been like building things. Like I remember you had like the autonomous car or something in downtown Jacksonville. I saw you've been working with companies like such as Coca-Cola. So other than like the Tesla robots, which people have seen, like what are you doing as like a robotics organization that's changing the landscape?
Yeah, well, so robots are everywhere, right? We just have to learn how to see them, and humanoids are certainly not the first robot. It's just the one that people get when they see it. So yeah, we focus at Chang Robotics. We focus on systems. That's the big difference. So most of the robot companies you see out there make a robot unit of one. You know, a driverless robo taxi. You know, a yellow robot that picks things up on a production line. Or now you're seeing the humanoids come out. Our main focus is on systems. We look to take individual units of one robot, assemble them into large systems. When they're mobile, they're called fleets. So fleet of robots. And when they're stationary, they can either be conventional robotics or cobots, collaborative robots. And so we just take the whole world of automation and we mix it together in a system. So that means the system is designed for a specific condition. So what you're talking about in Jacksonville was we designed the first autonomous mass transit system in the nation. That project had to be a system because we were dealing with a lot of different technology. We have, of course, driverless city buses, right? That's the cornerstone technology. But we have to figure out things like safety, fare management, digital advertising. And then we have a whole bunch of communications and IoT from the roadway that go back to the command center, so that we can control things like traffic lights, right? So, so that'd be a perfect example of a system where you've got probably order of magnitude 10 major different technologies working together, and then from the user perspective, it's got to be seamless. It's like it's easy. Apparently this bus is driverless. It shows up where I want it to when it's supposed to be there. I get on it. I leave. Good transaction, right? So robotics, when it's well executed, is super boring. Like any automation that works, it's like the first time you're super cool, you want to look under the hood, And after that, it's thoughtless. You just use it and it works.
I mean, that's the whole goal of anything, right? To make it so easy that anyone can use it, whether they understand it or not.
Yeah.
Because I mean, everyone pretty much uses a computer, but a very small percentage of the world knows how much code and time and effort has gone into building these mainframes so that you can post a picture on Instagram or now videos.
Yeah, that's right. And the only time you think about it is when it doesn't work, right? Like
Mhm.
X, the platform was down several times over this past weekend, and it was very visible. Like you weren't getting the information or the feed, or you couldn't post whatever the issue was. So you're like, this is the first time I thought about how X works, since Elon Musk took over the company and changed things, because for the most part, it just works. And that's what we're going for. So, like, our big thing, since we're doing physical automation, not software automation,
Mhm.
is the physical automation has to work well with the worker. It's probably the easiest way to think about it. So, we've now designed and deployed in a whole bunch of different worker environments, factories. There, you're going through things like machinist unions or apprenticeship programs, e-commerce buildings, very similar. Um, we've recently gotten into automated hospitals. So there, we're
Mhm.
really concerned about like nursing staff would be our prime stakeholder, and then some of the what's next for us after the things I've already mentioned is we've been selected as the engineering company to develop the first autonomous port in the nation.
Oh,
So
nice.
we're going to have a very critical workforce there, which is called the longshoremen and the truckers, right? And both of those two groups have been well organized and pretty noisy over the past couple of years. So what
Mhm.
we have to do from an engineering perspective, we have to make sure that they see this as a win, right? It makes my job better. It makes it easier. I get paid more. Those are the things workers care about. So we want to upskill them and then obviously give them opportunity to higher pay.
Yeah, because I mean, everyone's fearful, like, oh, is robots going to take over my job?
Yeah.
Ver-
Yeah. And what's cool in my role, so if you'd asked me, 8, 9 years ago when I started the company, are you gonna take people's jobs? I probably would have said, yeah, obviously, right? Like human was here doing a job, lifting the box, robot lifts the box. What we found, and this is super encouraging, is that through all the different workforces we've automated, and I've listed like 5 here, we've never had a layoff, never had a worker layoff. And so what's interesting is number one, workers are in short supply, right? And
Mhm.
depending on which federal policy you subscribe to, the number of workers may be getting smaller. And what that's going to do is it's going to pull more of the workforce from the sidelines who aren't currently employed to get back into the labor force because they see new cool opportunities that are exciting, right? So every customer that I have is struggling with workforce just to fill the jobs they have. Number two is we've kind of created two economies. We have the one you and I sit in, right? The financial and robotics economy, where it's very white collar, you know, 6-figure salary is taken for granted. New hires out of college are getting very attractive salaries right now. And then we have this manual labor, blue collar economy that has been shrinking, right? And
Mhm.
has been kind of left behind. So when we automate in a workplace, it's those jobs that benefit the most. Their job gets physically easier. Let the robot do the lifting. Let's get the human out of the lifting. Let the robot do the carrying. Let's get the human out of that. Amazon did a great job with this with e-commerce. Let the robot do the picking, right, as we order stuff. And then what happens is that worker all of a sudden has new desirable job skills. They're going to be certified on robotic systems and controls programming systems and software systems. So the way I like to think of it is for the first time, this blue collar worker can have a LinkedIn account, right? Because they actually have marketable job skills. And what that leads to is higher pay. So across these employment sectors I've mentioned, we've had some employers offer 40% pay increases to their robotic certified employees. So that's super exciting for the worker. Like I get paid more, it's easier, have cool tech, right? And then it's satisfying for the employer because they're producing way more product, much more than the pay raise they gave. And then their employees are sticky now, right? They've become the employer of choice in their region, which cuts down on this whole churn of kind of temporary labor and constant recruiting. And that's what makes big companies feel like a HR company, right? Is when they're constantly recruiting to onboard new talent, and that talent doesn't stick around.
Yeah, I mean, essentially with robotics, you've mentioned it multiple times in terms of like automation. It's essentially the new tool in a toolbox, except you don't need like to carry around a toolbox and a person has to use the tool. Now you can start adding automation so that the person can focus on like the creative part of their job, and it also allows them to be more efficient. And if someone can be more efficient in their position, and what used to take them 8 hours now takes 3.5 hours, now they're getting twice the output from one person, which makes the world a happier and more seamless place if things can get done faster.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, I'll give you a quick anecdote. We were automating one of the largest coffee roasteries in North America, and we were automating this existing plant with the primary goal of learning how to do it so we could go build the largest coffee roastery in North America. And we gave this existing factory that had, employment order of magnitude 1,000 workers, very large factory, the type of place you could walk around and get lost and not know where you are. And they had lots of machines, right? The place is packed with machines that do all the things within coffee roasting and packing. So we gave them enough new age robotics. One of our favorites is autonomous robots. So we gave them this big fleet of autonomous robots, and it was in theory enough robotics to cut the workforce by 20%, right? So they could go from a base of 1,000 workers to about 800 workers. That's not what they did. They chose to produce 20% more product, right? So they kept 1,000 workers. Everybody had an easier job, just average it out about 20% easier job by physical load. They got to work with cool stuff, and the plant became much more productive. So they made 20% more product, which is good for you and me because we're consumers of coffee, I assume. Anyways, I am. And so it's like, yay, more coffee at a better price. This is a win-win.
Yeah, because I mean, now everyone's like, who's going to be manufacturing all these things in America? And that's one of the items you had on your website in terms of manufacturing in America. My thought was like, well, robots can definitely do it, at least the heavy lifting.
Yeah, so all of our robot systems are AI enabled, not like totally AI powered. I'm not that bullish on AI yet. It's like it's going to take over and replicate, human capabilities. And that's partly because I design and install AI systems for a living. I'm like, man, this stuff is still super limited. But that's a perfect example of humans in the loop, right? If we're producing using very intelligent robotic systems to make American goods at the same price or better than overseas competitors, and we have employees that are supervising the systems, then we have kind of human in the loop AI, and no software AI system will replace kind of the human versatility, but they can be better at certain things, right? Like in your trade, spreadsheets used to be done in long form paper, right?
Oh yeah,
sure. You get some Microsoft Excel in there. I'm sure you're a power user. It's like, how many spreadsheets you want? I'll crank out 6 today, right? I can jam through this. What used to take weeks, I can do several per day now. So I think that's kind of the analogy, is that spreadsheet analogy for finance is robotics for manufacturing are just going to let the worker focus on the higher creative task. Like, how do we set it up, right? What is the design? What's the quality assurance? What's the customer service, right? Those are the things the human needs to do.
Yeah, it's like you could allow your employees to focus on the business rather than working in the business, because in the business, you can let the robotics take over in the business, and it allows your workers to focus on other things that are important for innovation or how to help an organization grow, rather than just, hey, we have to meet these numbers, hit this production, and hopefully we can do it and no one gets hurt or sick or there's layoffs, all sorts of things.
Yeah, and I think as trade is like the number one topic this year, I feel like in the economy, between like tariffs and working it out with China and just all the different things that we're going through as a country. One of the things that we used to be, if you take your economic charts and go back 50 years ago, the U.S. was a next net exporter of like everything except Swiss cheese. I mean, it was a huge net exporter across every category in the kind of industrial boom post World War II. And so that peaked. I don't know when it was, maybe in the early 70s, and it's been on a slide ever since. And as we get an automated workforce where we have the best tools, a carpenter would need the best tools to make the best furniture. So as our manufacturers have the best tools, I think we can easily get back to that net exporting economy across every sector. And then, it goes in tandem with a few things, workforce. Yeah, we got to have workers that know these systems and can run these factories, right? That will take humans. And that's very attractive to Gen Z. My observation, Gen Z loves working with their hands. They were overwhelmed with digital from like a time they were a baby, right?
Yeah.
So they want to work with their hands, but they want to work with technology too. So this is a win-win for them to get them engaged in the workforce in a productive capacity for manufacturing. Energy, there's going to be a huge developing conversation around energy. There was a huge executive order that came out, I think, last week around nuclear, getting back to nuclear energy. You're seeing also a doubling down in the current federal environment on stuff like electric buses. So it's happening in parallel. It's like this kind of green economy and this common sense energy policy are happening together. And then, if we have the workers, if we have the energy, and we've equipped our manufacturers with technology, then I think it's just bound to happen that we're the dominant manufacturing economy for the things we want to make, right? And I spent a lot of time on X. People on there love to say, yeah, what about blue jeans? I don't know. Is that strategic? Are we trying to make blue jeans? I haven't thought about it, right? But what about aircraft? Yes, I want to be the best country in the world to make aircraft. What about the supercomputing that's going to enable AI? Yeah, I want to be the best at that, right? And then what I can't wait to see how it plays out is what about these things, right? That's the new dialogue. Are we actually going to make our own phones again? And what's funny is, Silicon Valley came to relevance in the production of consumer electronics, right? That's what they were known for, both designing it and innovating and then making it. So that'll be really interesting to see if we can tie that back together, that we design things here and then we make things here.
Yeah, I mean, it's all about focus on the highest level of items that you actually want to produce. Just because you can do everything doesn't mean you have to.
Yeah.
It's good that we specialize in certain things, but obviously we want to have a good trade with other countries that may be better at certain things than what we are. But there's also other things that, every person has their little niche. Everyone's good at something. So it's all about figuring out how to do that in a systematic way to help the world go round and round, because most people never knew what the word supply chain meant until 2020. And that's something, as an engineer, I'm sure you learned about that in school, and that's like one of the big things in engineering is supply chain.
Yeah, it's a whole field, right? And it's just like we became experts in supply chain and virology, right? In like the same month, all of a sudden we learned so much that we never knew about before. But yeah, it's like with supply chain, it's a pendulum that swings, right? So all the big consulting companies cut their teeth telling companies, hey, you should have less inventory, right? Let's follow this Japanese model of lean inventory or just-in-time inventory. And I'm going to argue that totally worked in Japan for a couple of reasons. Number one is attention to detail, but the other is just the compactness of the nation, right? Like very productive nation that's in reality quite small. Like I'd be surprised if Japan had more land territory than California, right? And so just-in-time inventory just meant the guy 2 streets over is making the thing you need and he's sitting it to you right in time. As we apply that in our country, first off, we have a much larger country, so it can take a week to get something in by rail or truck. But then we started at the same time farming it out in globalization. then we found out how we kind of swung too far in lean inventory during COVID when we just couldn't supply like baby formula, right?
Hmm.
Where did it all go? Like how did we have enough yesterday and then today we didn't? It's not like we made more babies. Where'd all the baby formula go? So so I think we realized we swung too far. Companies didn't focus enough on supply chain. They're focused on over optimization of like cost, maybe outsourcing to other countries, but they didn't have security in the raw products it took to make their goods. So now it's starting to come back, and I think one of the big trends we're seeing is this kind of either reshoring or nearshoring of supply chain, right? And every company is going to have a different strategy. Are you partnered with Mexico and Canada, and making good use of USMCA? Or are you still using, Southeast Asia or the Middle East to do some, component fabrication for you? But I think what we're seeing is that it's coming back to the center, and people are finding a common sense approach of like, hey, we need to have enough control over our destiny that if a ship doesn't hit the port, we're not going out of stock on Amazon.
Yeah, I mean, we saw up in Baltimore that whole bridge collapse, and that whole port was in shambles, and that's a huge port.
Yeah. Yeah, and you would have never, the layperson would have never known what went in and out of Baltimore until it stopped going in and out, right? And then where I live in Jacksonville, we actually had to budget additional labor at the port to absorb a little bit of the Baltimore capacity. So our team here had to figure out like, okay, well, there's this impact. How can we offload some of those container ships, and get that onto American railways?
Yeah, because I know one of the things, if we keep everything in like North America, they have the rail, we have the Mississippi that goes all the way up and down the country. So you can put things on rail, put things on boat, basically distribute it. But when it's coming from all the way in Southeast Asia or somewhere all the way across the ocean, I mean, that's very slow. And most of it's done by, I believe, boat. Most of it's not done by plane just because
No,
it's
the
more
vast
affordable to
majority,
float it.
the vast majority of goods go by sea. It's by far the most economical. And then once it gets to a port, if it has the option, it wants to go by rail, right? That's kind of the hierarchy. And if it's a small load that doesn't, not worthy of a rail company's attention, then it goes by truck. That's kind of the hierarchy. And things factor in urgency, perishability. I'm going to pause for one quick sec. All right. The joys of home office.
It's all good. Yeah, so sea, rail, truck are the
Yeah. And then if you got the money, airplane. But you know how expensive it is to fly. So like sending a package over the air is just as expensive,
Yeah, I mean, Apple just flew everything out to India not too long ago.
Yeah. Yeah. That's when time matters, right?
Yeah, time is definitely matters, especially at that sort of scale. It's worth I don't even know how much that would cost.
Right. And we had an interesting one. We were importing robotics from Canada right as the tariffs were announced. And so we got hit. I like to joke we were the first company to pay the tariffs. Now in reality, there was 1,000+ companies like us at the border, with freight coming over, and I had a lot of people chirping at me saying like, "Well, why don't you just ship it sooner?" Right? Or didn't you see this coming? We did see it coming, but we planned this project that we were building a factory upgrade. We planned this project before the election in 2024. And then we had contractual requirements of a custom robotic build and ship dates locked into a contract. So no, we didn't have the ability to move it. It just happened that tariff deadline fell right on top of our ship date. And we were scheduled to be across the border, I think it was 10 calendar days ahead of the new Canadian tariffs. So we were pretty low stress. We're like, oh, well, we missed it. Like, no big deal. We got lucky. We got through right before that. and then what happened is we had 3 trucking contracts canceled in a row. And all the big guys like, General Motors and some of the aerospace companies that have major back and forth supply chains between Canada and the US, they were on the phone with the CEOs of those trucking companies like, I don't care whose contract you had, cancel it. My load's going across. So since we're intermittent shippers, we're not like loading trucks every day. We got canceled 3 times in a row before we finally found a carrier that would take our load, and it was unfortunately the day after the tariffs. So
Did you think about like flying up there yourself, or was it too much?
it's a good question. I did. I mean, I had a man on it, right? Well, I'm a professional project manager, so it wasn't like I'm like, oh, I'll send some emails and hope this works out. I had a man on it for sure, but the issue came in because it was robotics that were mobile. They had lithium-ion battery packs, which by US DOT rules is a hazmat load. So for the insurance, the type of truck, and the rating of the truck driver all have to line up to carry that hazmat load. Just like on the airplane, they ask you about your lithium-ion batteries. So so it wasn't really an option. It was like we had to find a certified carrier, had to line up with our insurance. God forbid we lost a load on the road. And what did I tell my customers? Like, oh, I had my guy go up there with a U-Haul and move it. That's not going to work. So, we at the end of the day, we are professional engineers, so it all has to be compliant.
Yeah, I mean, there's so many rules, regulations. Everyone has to follow that you're not even aware of. I mean,
Right.
I'm probably not aware of most of them like you are, but I mean, there's just so many. Like you have to have.
You only learn the hard way, Joshua.
Well, you said you had to have the right trucker, the right kind of truck, the right kind of insurance.
Yep. You had to have all 3. So that's why I couldn't just send a guy up there with a massive truck or something and just ship it all down ourselves.
Yeah, it's really interesting. Yeah, I saw a bill signed for coal, to use coal to start powering AI data centers. I think it was called like the Big Beautiful Coal Bill or something.
Really?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, that's what China's doing, right?
Yeah, China, India. I know a lot of investors have been looking into coal, and the order is coal, then oil. I think we still have a lot of coal around, and plus they use the metallurgical coal for infrastructure, which infrastructure here in America definitely needs some help, especially in certain areas.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not an expert on coal by any means. I know the primary source is obviously energy, and then the secondary uses, it's in everything. Like the coal byproduct is in like cement and concrete and all kind of stuff that it gets added.
Steel.
Yeah, so it has like secondary uses beyond the first use. But I think it interesting for people in your audience to understand coal is just pull up online what the longest chart you can see of U.S. aluminum production is. So like the aluminum is one of my favorites because they talk about it politically, right? So you'll hear Trump talk about aluminum, and it's kind of hard to connect. You're like, is he talking about aluminum cans? Or like, well, it's a primary building material for everything. Helicopters, airplanes, cars, it's in everything.
Robots.
Yeah, robots. Consumer electronics. So it would be very hard to run a country without aluminum. It turns out to be incredibly important, right? Well, if you think about what we've done with energy policy in the country, where we haven't really invested in nuclear, new nuclear since the 70s, that's a pretty flat line in terms of nuclear output. And then what we've done with coal, where we're decommissioning coal plants, you'll see that the U.S. went from 90% world domination in aluminum in the 70s to like 10% today. So it's been, hugely reduced. At the same time, you can track like, developing nations like China and India, and also now the Middle East, and see what's happened to their aluminum production. Well, the secret there is the most expensive ingredient to make aluminum is electricity. That's the number one, not even the raw material. It's the number one is electricity. So the production will go wherever the energy is cheapest. That's just kind of economics 101. And then when you when you read the headlines, like I can't remember the exact stat, but it's like China is commissioning a new coal-fired power plant every week or something.
Yeah, they
It's
make
like
a lot of
really,
coal plants.
yeah, lots of coal plants. One of the things they're doing is they're putting a coal plant and an aluminum factory or other energy intensive factories side by side, and they're just creating like a small little loop of we have a power plant, now we have industry, right? So, and then you look at their share of those commodities, including refining of metal materials, and you're like, okay, well now it makes sense, right? That's why they need all these coal plants, is because they're focused on doing all this refining and primary material production.
Yeah, it's like, got your coal, then it's like it reminds me of like like an old like a small town. You got like the CPA, and then you got like the liquor store, and then you got like the doctor all next door to each other.
Yeah, yeah. What are the basic things we need to run this town? Yeah,
Yeah, you get your tax return, they give you the money, you go see the doctor, you go get medication, get everything you need on one city block. So, I mean, I guess from an engineering standpoint, it makes sense having everything just right in one little
yeah,
circle.
and we obviously have huge structural advantages to any other country. Like since we're on electricity, the biggest barrier to industrializing India, which certainly has the workforce, like they're really good at software and higher education, and India's got a lot of things it's good at. One thing they're not good at is getting electricity to the building that needs it, and then
Mm,
keeping it on 24 hours a day, every day. So that's one of the biggest problems they've had in India is when major U.S. companies go to take advantage of that market, maybe open a new factory, they end up having to put in a secondary power plant at their own expense because the utility power, doesn't work very well. So, so that would be like one of the big reasons why India has been kind of slow to advance into, export, is just because they can't keep the power on, right? And you'd see in that case, like we don't have to agree on the environmental policy, but on the getting electrons to the building it needs to go to, China's doing a great job, right? Because they're very focused on it.
yeah, I know. Coal, I guess coal's the way to do it. It's just, I guess, considered like a dirty energy.
Yeah, I think it's but they're also doing hydro and solar, like they're leading new development in both of those sectors. So it's kind of like they're taking a all of the above approach. And I think, the US, I don't think we're going to be easily able to get back to scaled coal fired power plants, right? There are some environmental drawbacks to going with that as it results to things like the byproduct in the water coming out of the plant, right?
Mm-hmm.
Flint, Michigan, if we remember that trauma,
Yeah.
like nobody wants that in your community. Like it's fine if it's 2 states away, but not in your community, right? So I think the cool thing is we're like right on the footsteps of Gen 4 nuclear, right?
Mm-hmm.
And for your audience, if they don't know what that is, basically the U.S. stopped at what they call Generation 2 nuclear, right? We haven't really done much R&D or new advancement beyond that. Um, France was probably the champion of going to the next generation, that Generation 3 nuclear, right? So what the newest power plant in France would be your Gen 3 nuclear plant.
Mm.
And as you might have seen, France just signed an agreement. They're exporting power to Germany now because Germany closed down all their nuclear power plants. So, so France is loving everybody else closing them except them. Well, the new nuclear is Generation 4. And what this can do is it can take that used nuclear feedstock
Mm-hmm.
used in the nuclear reactors. It would typically be considered waste, right? Nuclear biohazardous nuclear waste, radioactive. They can take that feedstock and it still has about 90% of the energy left in it. And they can run that through a micro reactor. So now the reactors can be way smaller and they can fit within the existing grid. So
Mm-hmm.
if you were doing a new industrial park, for example, that industrial park could have a small nuclear reactor from a new Gen 4 system, and
Mm-hmm.
it could just take care of the whole industrial park without burdening the grid.
So what you're saying is it creates something and then it has a 90% like use after it's made, and then that has a 90% use, 90% use, 90% use until eventually it gets to zero, but that would take quite some time.
Yeah, it would take some time, but it also reduces like the biohazard of nuclear waste, right? Because you're depleting some of that radioactive energy out of what's existing waste from our existing nuclears. So you don't have to do any new mining. You don't require any new feedstock. You just take the byproduct from existing nuclear plants, stick it in a Gen 4 nuclear plant, and boom, you can light up the industrial park or the AI data center, like whatever the energy hog is, you can set them up side by side.
Yeah, because I mean that's what everything comes down to is like energy, which is oil, coal, nuclear. I mean, I don't think most people know how electricity is made. I just know like I flip a switch and a light comes on. That's it.
Yep, yep. And here in Jacksonville, we have a huge coal receiving yard, connected to the water. And a lot of people are like, "What is that?" That's coal. They're shipping in coal. So we have a combination here. We have a new. We actually have I think the newest nuclear reactor in the nation. We're sharing with Georgia Power. So North
Mhm.
Florida and Georgia share that, and then we also have a lot of coal-fired power plants in the area. So we're kind of doing both.
Where's that one? Is it like near Yulee, like on the border?
So on the Georgia side, it's up in Brunswick, and
Oh
that's
yeah.
because Florida's not gonna. That's NIMBY, right? It's like we'll sign up for nuclear, but not in our state. Can you move that one state over?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
we're like that about a lot of things in Florida. We're super into the environment.
Yeah. Well, when you move up north, everyone makes fun of Florida. It's
Yeah.
always in the news. All the fun stuff in Florida is on the news.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
When I moved up here, everyone's like, "Oh, now you live in like a good state." I was like, "What does that mean?"
Well, Florida man is having fun. We know that. So.
Florida man is always having fun. Yeah, I have I know someone who moved from Ohio down to St. Petersburg and is a police officer. I was like, "Have you met the Florida man yet?" They're like, "Every day, we're meeting
Yeah.
the Florida man."
Yeah. This guy's
But
out there.
you gotta have the Florida man.
Yeah. You
But
know
hey,
why we're in the news, right? Do you know that? Okay, so number one, Florida's a fun state. So,
yeah,
when there's too much fun, there's going to be headlines. But the other reason is it's because we have Open Records Act. So
mm,
all of our arrests are public record, which is why the headline starts like Florida man and then does something crazy, right? Is because the news sites can just scrape all the arrest records in Florida. It's like a live feed, and then they publish the outrageous stuff. If you're in New York, or if you're in New Jersey, or any other state that has way less headlines, I don't think it's that less crazy things are happening. I think it's just that it's hard to find out about it, right? There's not this like continuous news feed. So that is the reason behind Florida man, is because we have open records on that.
well, there you
It
go.
makes for a great meme.
Hey, everyone needs a great meme,
Yeah.
especially when things are crazy. Which when are things not crazy? Things are always crazy.
Things have been crazy for a little while. So
Yeah, I mean, you started your company in 17?
yeah.
I mean, in 8 years, I mean, when you first started the company, I mean, what was like the vision compared to like what actually happened?
Yeah, it's obviously totally changed, right? That's the whole point of small companies and startups, is that they're agile and can react quickly. So when I started the company, I didn't know what I wanted to be. I knew what I was good at, right? So
Hmm.
good engineer, good project manager, and I can build the best factories on earth. Like I knew those three things. Um, and so I thought in my head, well, great, we'll just be a factory construction or factory development company, right? We'll just
Hmm.
make factories. And as I stepped into that, we kept getting miscongeniality. So we would win second place in like every client, competition, bid or RFP, if you will, where they were like, yeah, we really like you guys, but just too small. Well, yeah, dude, we're like 6 months old. Of course we're too small, right? And so what I realized is that's a game that you have to have 500 to 1,000 head count to even play.
Hmm.
That ground up construction. So as we began getting customers, two of our customers just told us, you are going to be a robotics company. You're going to be our robotics company. Right. And it was kind of like kind of weird. But I didn't
You're
feel
like,
like
okay.
I didn't feel like I had a say in it. And so for the first couple of years, and I had built a lot of really high end factories that were full of automation for e-commerce and advanced manufacturing and all kind of stuff. And um, so I wasn't uncomfortable around it, but I didn't feel like a domain expert to
Mhm.
where a customer would tell me that's all we do, right? And then, but obviously, being a young company, we took the contract, right? You gotta,
You're like, yes, we do robotics now. Perfect.
yes, absolutely. We'll give it a try. And we were 4 years in business when we just changed our name from our first name was Chang Industrial, like we build industrial facilities, to Chang Robotics. We're like, let's just lean into it. And what ended up happening was we built the two largest autonomous systems in the world for their categories, and they were both award winning. So it was like, whoa, maybe we are good at this, right? And we had built a whole new partnership framework with other innovative companies that could help us, and they wanted to be part of us as like kind of the overall designer,
Mhm.
and then we wanted to use their technology, so it was a win-win. And then it became very clear, it was like, well, we've built a world-class supply chain. It's back to your other question. We have great partners willing to help us out. Turns out we're really good at it because we haven't messed one up yet, and we've built some pretty wild facilities, including the nation's first what they call dark pharmacy, or an e-commerce pharmacy.
Mhm.
So typically in production, we worry about inventory, right? And somebody in your shoes is like, I need the inventory because I'm doing the balance sheet, right?
Yeah.
It's very important for the balance sheet. Well, we you don't get more inventory precision than doing a pharmacy, right? Robotic pharmacy. And so when we did that, I was like, wow, we're really good at inventory. We can keep track of everything. And so fast forward till today, we just lean into it. And for our very best customers, we will design their factory. So we do get asked that from time to time. We get introduced because some company wants to have a robotic future. They're like, we're about to start a transformation of the business. We get kind of tied together. Then along the way, they'll say, hey, by the way, can you design our new factory? It's like, okay, if it's a good customer, then the answer is yes. At the end of the day, I'm still a civil engineer, so it's like I still like designing a site, from time to time.
As a matter of fact, actually, yes.
Yeah.
And that's actually what we were hoping to do, but we ended up in this robotics thing because we got a contract, and it's like, yeah, you gotta be a yes man in the beginning. Yeah, we could do that.
Yeah, but I cut my teeth in construction, and that's just tough, right? There's always a thing. It's like a fire or a hurricane, or like there's something that disrupts your construction every time, or it's too hot. I've had construction sites that were too hot to work, and then too cold to pour concrete. So it's like there's always a thing with construction. What I like about robotics is, really every time we do a new system, nobody's ever done it before. Right? It's such a new space that it's always like, okay, it's the first time somebody's done this, which is cool.
Yeah, it's cool to be like innovative and having to almost be a student as you're doing it for someone else who hired you to do it. But it's a whole new world.
Yeah.
And I mean, I wouldn't say like you're winging it, like you know what you're doing, but essentially you're like learning how to do it as you do it because everything is changing so fast,
Yeah.
especially with AI.
Yeah. It, yeah, it's a global race. It's a global arms race right now in AI and robotics. And so that's part of it is we have to stay current like every 3 months. We have to reanalyze like what the latest trends in the economy and the robotics market are, probably every 3 months, because it comes out that fast. And then we have to, we're very good at underwriting, technical underwriting.
Hmm.
And so we see a lot of, fake news or vaporware, right? So like people are always showing me stuff like, oh, check this out. You could do this. No, that's not real. There's this little thing called physics that's going to prevent that, right? Until we solve something else, we're not ready for that. But yeah, it's that kind of sorting through fact versus fiction. And just for your audience, 90% of the cool stuff on YouTube is fake. So just use that filter. Like 9 out of 10 chance, if I think this is cool, it's not actually real. So then we curate that into a small basket, right? We sift through it, and then we're like, here's the latest and greatest, and then we offer that latest cutting edge tech to our customers.
Mm-hmm.
But it's not the only thing they get, right? They get all this experience of how to do other like legacy robotics or conventional automation, mechanical automation. So you get it all together, but with that kind of spark of latest and greatest wrapped in there.
So was the video that I saw of like a robot deciding to like, I guess, go to sleep because it was tired fake or
Yeah.
something like that?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
I
Your
looked
robot,
at it, I was like, I don't know. It definitely got my attention.
yeah. Yeah. Your robot will go to sleep if you screwed up the settings, right? Like your laptop, you didn't have it set to stay on long enough. If it ran out of juice, again, like a laptop, right? It's not more
Mhm.
advanced than a laptop. Or if your like Wi-Fi is terrible, then it will go to sleep because it's like, well, nobody told me to do anything, so I'll take a nap, right? So we have to think about all that stuff. Like we've never deployed at a customer site and been like, your internet and Wi-Fi are perfect. It's always
Mhm.
terrible. By our standards, it's terrible. You didn't notice it till we came in, and we're like, we're gonna pull 90% of the bandwidth out of the air because our robots need so much information and they have so much to tell you, right? They love to communicate. So yeah, so that would be an example, but no, our stuff is all very, very programmed. Like it has a job to do, it knows what it's supposed to do. And when we give it autonomy, we give it a narrow, they call it ODD, but a narrow design domain. And it's like, here's the sandbox in which you can make decisions.
So like ADD for robots.
Yeah, it's the opposite. Yeah,
Opposite.
giving it a narrow ODD is like giving it Adderall. It's like, focus on this. This is what I want you to focus on. Yeah,
Sweet.
yeah,
Well, you're doing cool things.
yeah.
If you're not using AI, you probably need to. Otherwise, you're gonna end up like the nice little lady that I saw at the store the other day, pulling out her checkbook and writing a check.
Yeah, what I would so for your audience, we're talking to high net worth people or business owners. Who's in the audience here?
It's people who have taken an unconventional approach to building wealth. So like business owners or people who want to eventually become a business owner.
Cool. Well, let me give you 2 plugs then. So number one is a tip and trick for your audience. So hopefully everybody in your audience already has some form of AI in their life. But if you don't, here's an easy way to do it. Sign up for one of the paid AIs. You can do ChatGPT, you can do Grok, you can use Perplexity. There's a number of personal assistant AIs that are really good. So go from the free version to the paid version, probably $20 a month. And if you're a business owner, require every, I'd say, manager and up in the business to do that, and then just reimburse them for it. Just give them all $20 a month and require them to do it. And then encourage people to tell you about when it saved them time or money.
Mm-hmm.
What you're going to be amazed with is the number of, once the employees start to catch on and they become good prompt engineers, they'll be like, hey, this thing that used to take me like 3 days, I just used AI and got it done. And, so I'm taking it early Friday. And so as a business owner, that productivity, you got to celebrate that. And then if it's in your own personal life, you'll just find, neat little ways to use it. So for example, I use ChatGPT does my first cut at thermodynamics every time. Why?
Mm-hmm.
I don't want to have to remember Georgia Tech, dude. Like that was so long ago. And then, it'd take you 4 hours to do a test, So I can get pretty close with ChatGPT in about 5 minutes. And then I coach it to get to the perfect answer because it will not understand everything that I want it to do. So I'll have to kind of refine it a few times, but I'll get there. I'll have a sense of where I'm going pretty quickly. So that's kind of, if you're a individual or business owner, get the paid version. You need it. I promise. And then if you are running a company, one thing to do is to set a AI productivity target for all your managers.
Mm-hmm.
So, for example, I want every department to be 20% AI driven by next year, right? And let them go through their own search of what the new tools are, changing every day, of course. But there's an AI for marketing, there's an AI for legal, There's an AI for finance. There's an
Yeah,
AI.
I have an AI captain compliance.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah, there's an AI for shipping manifests. Going back to supply chain, like you can.
Yeah.
There's literally an AI for almost every industry these days. So see if you can get a meaningful number starting at 20% target of your human effort hours just offloaded to an AI agent is what they're called. Just have that AI agent take that over. And the easiest one is probably marketing. So and your marketing team will like it. Take some of the tedious work out of producing this podcast, for example.
Oh yeah, it's
so fast.
crazy. You take the podcast, you take the link, it comes up with the clips,
Yeah.
and you take it, it redistributes everywhere.
Yeah. So that's a good little like low hanging target. And then don't let the technical guys be dorks about it. Tell them you heard it from an engineer on Joshua's podcast.
Yeah.
So the engineering department has to do it too, right? So that's that. And then to plug for unconventional money, we did launch a venture capital company this year.
Oh, nice.
And that is going really well. We're still taking investment, but we just placed our first 5 investments. So we now have 5 portcos. And then by the end of this month, we'll be expanding to about 7 portcos. The theme is American manufacturing tech. So everything I've been talking about, but what's next, right? So how do we support the types of companies we wish we could be installing for our customers? So that's the Cheng Robotics Fund. You can check that out at cr.fund. Very easy website, cr.fund. And it's all about made in USA. It's about giving American workers the tech they need. We love it because first off, it's fun. I mean, we were doing this anyways in our business. Now we have investors helping us do it faster. But Silicon Valley has just missed the boat here. Right? Mm-hmm. They've been so focused on SaaS and maybe even large language AI, but primarily SaaS, right? Silicon Valley is a SaaS shop. Software as a service. How many Audifies or Lees can I put in your life, right? So they kind of went too far with that. And they didn't focus on their roots, which was producing technology. So as we get into this space, we're finding amazing companies, and that's our job as their venture capital investor is to help them get the technical development, the engineering, and then ultimately the sales market traction by helping them be placed into large companies' factories.
That's sweet.
Yeah. That was my plug for the podcast. So
yeah, you can do whatever you want, but we'll see everyone next time.
Yeah,
bye, everyone.
Thanks. Bye.
Sweet.